Welcome back to the Cheap Heat Productions podcast. Okay, welcome back to the show. And by God, have I got a familiar face on the screen today. A man that's probably a little bit pissed off after that introduction video. Vegas Joe, how are you doing, man?
Well, I was doing good until I saw that bitch down in Florida, Carole Baskin, on your show. That's the reason. That's the reason I've got all these fake tigers, is because she stole all my real ones.
Yeah. So we're joined today by Mr. Bradley Weldon, Vegas Joe Exotic impersonator, man. Great to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing really well. Enjoyed watching some of the previous interviews, and it's awesome to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So look, what I want to know is, before all this Vegas Joe stuff, and we'll get into the Joe stuff in due time, like, how did this journey through entertainment begin for you? Have you been involved in entertainment all your life, or just kind of your story?
And I've always just been a guy trying to just figure things out. From Oklahoma. So born and raised here in Oklahoma, and started a process serving firm because I watched Pineapple Express, that Seth Rogen movie. And I watched it one day and I said, man, that looks like a job I could do. So I did. I started serving papers and started a process serving firm, and then I turned it into a courier business. And then an attorney calls and asks me if I'd be willing to go serve a crazy guy down in Wynnewood some paperwork. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's what I do every day. And I picked it up and went down to that GW Exotic Zoo. I mean, I've driven by it, I've seen the signs. I never had a reason to stop and look at some tigers, but bought my ticket, went in, served deposition subpoenas to everybody, and went back, turned in an invoice, got paid. Just normal day of work. Well, then it just kept happening, and then I had to go back down. And so now for the next, it was probably a 2.5-year period, that this attorney that I was working for, whose client was Carole Baskin, was having me serve and borderline harass. I mean, she would have me serve everybody, from his parents. I had to serve his mom right after she'd fallen and broken her hip, and they were wanting me to serve her at the hospital, but I didn't get the paperwork in time to serve her at the hospital. I mean, I'm always polite. I mean, I don't do the Seth Rogen Pineapple Express, you've been served. I'm always, very best of luck with it. I'm just a third party guy. I don't have anything to do with one side or the other. Pretty similar to this Joe Exotic deal, this Vegas Joe deal. I'm just playing a role. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. I talked to Carole. I talked to Howard on the phone. And then I talked to, Joe's people. John Phillips came out to Las Vegas. And so from doing the process serving and handing everybody paperwork, subpoenas, and always being friendly, and most importantly, they were always friendly back to me, just led to a nice little career. My wife had an opportunity to go chase oil up in Denver. So we bolted up to Denver, Colorado, and then she got to make some money, and then oil shit the bed, and the pandemic started with COVID. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I mean, I can't just run back to Oklahoma, because I sold all those clients to another firm. And Tiger King came out and people watching it. I didn't watch it that first probably 2 weeks that it came out because it just wasn't something that I was interested in watching.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be just more of a documentary than a shit show. But then after all the memes and everything that came out, I was like, oh my God, let me catch up on some of this stuff. And learned a few things while watching it and just made the same jokes everybody else was making, told my wife to go make me a sandwich, bitch. Just silly stuff like that. And as bills started, on the horizon of, if oil doesn't pick back up, I'm gonna have to try something. And so I told her, I said, why don't I go out to LA? And she's like, California's shut down. You can't go to California. I said, well, what about Vegas? She's like, oh hell, here we go. She's like, we don't need you in Vegas. And I was like, no, seriously, what if I just go and I already had because at that point I'd grown out my hair long because at the beginning it was, short and pretty, and then just had it
So
growing out.
so that's your real hair as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't plan, but yeah, it's all
Wow.
real. So then, a couple of boxes of peroxide and trash it up a little bit and look exotic. So
Yeah.
she goes, well, what if it looks dumb? I'm like, well, we'll see. And if it's too terrible, we can always cut it off. It'll grow back. And
Yeah.
I went down there and people loved it. I mean, people were eating it up and taking a lot of pictures, always just trying to show the fun side of Job, never the
bad side.
yeah, the unpleasant side. So I'm always friendly, and I learned that 95% of people know at least 5% about Joe, and that led to some Super Bowl commercials. There was a regional Super Bowl commercial where they did car dealership, and then another car dealership, Seth Wadley. I did their car dealership commercials. That just was supposed to be a 5-week, haha, get a couple of people to laugh, and then they just kept renewing it. And I'm like, I think it ended up running from Labor Day to like March. I mean, it was so September to March, and that was that went from, hey, I don't necessarily have to stand out there and sweat in Las Vegas. I sit back and maybe pay a couple of bills, and then got lucky enough that Netflix let me shoot some body double stuff for Tiger King 2, some of the recreation scenes. We filmed those, I guess, January of 2021. And the scenes that they had me film down at like Joe's prison down in Fort Worth, like actually at the prison before we were escorted out. And that was part of the plan, Tiger King people, the Netflix people were just like, Eric Good was like, they're going to kick you out, buddy. But that's what we want. We want them to have you leave. And as you're leaving, that'll be you exiting the prison. We're going to be rolling. So just know. And I'm like, all right. Well, the lady, she tried talking to me. Like, she's like, sir, stop. I'm like, well, shit. Eric said we're rolling. So I got to keep walking. And so I just kept walking. She's like, sir, stop. I'm like, shit, we only get one take. Once I'm kicked out, I'm kicked out. So I just kept walking. Well, now she's on the radio. She's called supervisors. Now we've got an escort coming down this pathway back out of the prison. And you could just see Eric Good, like, keep it going. This is because then it looked like Joe was really being released from jail.
Yes.
And we had the same truck limo that Joe had waiting for him. That same company, everything. They rented the same truck. That limo's sitting there waiting, and that truck, he's letting me in, and we did 74 takes of me getting in. Because now we're out in the street, so the feds couldn't say anything. We're just in the city street getting in and out of a limo. And we took, I don't know how many, it had to be 30, 40 takes of just getting in and out of this limo. Well, I decided to spice it up a little bit. So one time I turned and I flipped off. I was like, and he's like, oh, now we got to do that. So I learned real quick, any improvisation, any kind of improvising that I do
Yeah.
is just going to lead to more work. So I quit. I was like, I'll just do what you say. I don't want to do anymore. Because one time I flipped off, or I kicked off my flip flop in the limo, like to kick back and relax because Joe just got out of jail. Life was good. He said, "Oh, we got to do." Well, so the harder I tried to recreate that flip flop kick, the worse it got. I'm not real good at kicking off flip flop when I'm trying.
You have to keep doing it.
Yeah, and they kept changing lenses because it's a lot of work. And at that point, it kind of got me into the bug because leading up to this point, all I was doing was standing in Vegas, waving to people. If they came up, they'd say, "How much for a picture?" I'd say, "Hell, anything you give me, as long as you tip better than that bitch down in Florida." And so sometimes they'd give me a high five. Sometimes, they'd give me a $5 bill. But it was always just fun. But then once the Tiger King deal started, and then had to recreate some scenes with Jeff Lowe and Lauren Lowe and a little fight scene. And there's some good stuff that they filmed that they never used for Tiger King 2 because a lot of it was, hey, let's show the real Joe, the Jeff Lowe versions of the Joes,
the dark side of Joe.
Yeah, because after Tiger King, Joe was up on a pedestal. Even if it's unintentional, Joe was the hero. And Carole and everybody else who were not in prison were hated on. And Tiger King 2 was supposed to be hey, let's level the playing field. And I mean, I didn't know any of this. I just showed up. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I could kind of start seeing, okay, so you want me to do this? Yeah, that doesn't look good. And then it was, well, do this. I'm like, shit, after this Tiger King 2 comes out, I'm not going to be near as much fun to take a picture with on the street.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, this is going to suck. So suck for me as a impersonator, but I'm like, this ain't going to go on forever. I mean, this is going to be a 18-month is what my plan was. I signed an 18-month lease in Vegas and I said, I'm going to do 18 months and then I get a haircut and go back to, writing children's books and just being normal. And here I am now 2 years later and still.
Are you still in Vegas?
No, I'm in Oklahoma now.
Okay.
Just right back here in Oklahoma. I'm halfway in between Tulsa and Oklahoma City. $39 flight to Vegas anytime I want. So
Not
whenever
bad.
I get a gig, yeah, it's great. Gig Salad, it's a little website people will book me for appearances and stuff on. And I just tell them, yeah, I can be there. And I mean, the next day, it costs a little bit more money for me to go jump on the plane the next day. But at any time, I can just jump in the car and drive to Vegas, bring out some of these tigers,
Yeah. What kind of stuff have people requested you to do? Like, have you been doing any weddings or anything crazy like that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of casino appearances, car dealership appearances, just business appearances where I'll stand outside and stand up on top of this tiger van with all the tigers and just wave. I mean, I'm cheaper than an inflatable gorilla. Some people will get those inflatable gorillas and then they're like, man, we can hire this Joe fella a lot cheaper. But, I've had some exotic parties
Okay.
where people, yeah, they'll offer me a giant pineapple and say, show up to this friendly party. And like 15 minutes, I'll show up. And my wife, she's always like, hey, you're in character. Just don't be stupid. And I show up, I give them their, hee ho hos, take pictures, and then I see what is going on and I bow out. So, but what's amazing is I thought there would be a lot more gay community situations.
Yeah.
Then, man, people say that they watch Tiger King, and I get it. Most watched documentary in the history of the world. And people come up to me and they'll be like, oh my gosh, what your wife did to you was terrible. Like, And at first, like that first week, I would try to inform him, well, that wasn't his wife. That was his arch enemy. You know, Joe's gay. And, well, Joe's
Yeah.
gay. Well, you didn't watch Tiger King if you didn't leave there knowing Joe was gay.
Yeah.
So now I'm just like, yeah, that dirty bitch, you know, hell. And they're like, man, you think she killed her first husband? And I, I've talked to Carole and Howard, and they've always been super nice to me.
Yeah.
But when I'm in character, I'm like, hell, you know, she did, you know, and I just, but the Brad side of me,
Yeah.
Howard and
What does
Carole, super nice.
yeah. What does Carole think? Because she obviously knows about this Vegas Joe thing. What does she think about it?
She just says I look a lot like him, and that, I mean, they've invited me to Big Cat Rescue. They just asked that I, you know, please, you know, maybe put my hair in a ponytail and shave a little bit. And that's the reason I'm not completely shaved right now. Is I do a community theater, got a role at a community theater where I'm Jed Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to get rid of this, and then, but I don't grow hair very quick, so it may take a while.
Yeah. I've had Carole on the podcast twice, and obviously I've had people like John Rinke and Ripper who were on the
Yeah,
flip side to what Carole believes and whatever. I always say to them, look, I'll listen to anyone's opinion because I don't know. You know, you don't know. Only they know or she knows whatever's went on. So like I think it's fair. I think it's fair to give everyone their own say. You know, and you know I can see where they're both coming from and both points that they're making. So I never try and I'd never get someone on the show and criticize them. Like I wouldn't say it to Carole, you know, you killed your husband or anything like that. I bring it up in conversation in such a way that, well, what do you think that people are saying this or whatever? I don't really have an opinion on it because like what would I know really?
right. And it's bad business on my end to care. I mean, you know, or to form an opinion, to do anything other, you know, because nobody cares about Brad Weldon. You know, nobody cares what I think. So I just stay in the Joe mode, and you know, and Joe doesn't like Carole, so I just say piss on Carole. You know, anytime I get a chance. But when I am texting Howard and Carole and talking to them on the phone and wishing them well through, you know, Howard just had some back surgery, and
Yeah.
I mean, they're real life people, and it's a shame that they've had to live with that black cloud of hate from strangers. That one thing I learned is stay out of the comment section. So I hope they stay out of the comment section of all the video, because I could be holding a puppy dog and people will sit there and say hateful things about me just because they're saying hateful things. And I'm like, just keep scrolling. You know, if they're talking about that Vegas Joe guy is terrible because he's making money off Joe's name, it is what it is. I mean, I ain't making enough money to,
There's
you know,
look, there's plenty of people making money off Joe's name or because Joe
yeah.
was involved. Joe just like he always wanted that level of fame, and then when it came, he's been put in prison. It's just so, I guess, ironic in a way, isn't it?
It's sad. I mean, it's a tragedy. It's like
Mm,
that's watching and reading. I mean, all day right before talking to you, I've been talking to his, you know, power of attorney. Her name's Tammy, super nice lady, but she does all his social media stuff.
yeah,
And it's just, I feel for Joe because he's just, I don't know, he's in prison. Just he's a caged animal, and I hate saying that because it's so
yeah.
cliche and
It's
sad.
the irony as well.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you know, you see his posts where he's just begging for anybody to listen, for anybody to help, and I don't, I don't know if that person's out there. Um, and so I tell Tammy, I told John Phillips, his attorney, you know, because he came out to Vegas and all chumming it up and rubbing elbows with me and took me, you know, to dinners, lunches, and then invites me to David Copperfield. And I'm like, are you inviting Brad? Are you inviting Joe? He goes, well, I think it'd be great if you, it'd be really funny if you came as Joe. And I sit back and I think, how, I don't know, how screwed up is it that Joe's real life attorney is out in Vegas on Joe's dime, whining and dining me. And we stayed out till 4:00 in the morning at the casino bars, and
Yeah.
people coming up making TikTok videos with me, and John Phillips
Was
can't
it
help.
was it a publicity thing?
No, it was John Phillips. Well, he was out in California and he was talking to, I think, Brad Small or one of Joe's other attorneys. I think saw an opportunity to work in Vegas.
Yeah.
So he came out, and I understood that, hell, he's going to come out. He's going to see what this is all about, make sure I'm not singing Joe's songs, wearing, trademark situations, which I stay away. Hey, I bought my first 2 hats. I bought for $100 from SethWadley.com. The shirts I buy it from Etsy, just random Amazon. And I'm just a ugly white guy with bleached mullet that, I mean, I tell people all the time, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't get over how much you look like Joe. I'm like, all us white people look alike, and, but like, the side of my van, it's wrapped in tiger, but it says stay exotic. I don't, and that's the reason my name is Vegas Joe X. It would have been
Yeah.
just as legal, just as safe to be Vegas Joe Exotic. But I'm like, that's gray that I don't need to even step into the gray. I mean,
Exactly.
I'm Vegas Joe X. People will be like, hey, is there any way you can sing? I saw Tiger. Well, 1, I don't sing. 2, Joe doesn't sing. But that's licensed material. That's what got
Yes.
Joe. That's what got Joe screwed in the first place with Carole, was all the licensing infringements with Big Cat Rescue, which goes back to that real humorous irony whenever Joe and his people will be like, Joe, this Vegas guy's out there making money on Joe's. Well, that's exactly what got you $1 million, is because you refused to avoid the gray area. He went with Big Cat Entertainment and used the same, and that's the paperwork that I was handing him as a, normal Brad with short hair and, not
I
near
think in a
exotic.
way, I think in a way that you're kind of keeping Joe relevant. Now, I know that's a funny thing to say, but obviously the Tiger King 2 wasn't as successful as Tiger King 1. Well, it wasn't as watched or talked about anyway. Different circumstances, different time.
Tiger King 2 was horrible, like almost unwatchable. And as much as I am neutral for that John Phillips, he really has just, I don't know, it's not a greed thing. I know that he is a fame whore, John Phillips. I mean, we were sitting there in David Copperfield's theater, and he's, it is what it is, but people would come up to me and they'd say, hey, I'm actually from Oklahoma. Is there any way I can take a picture with you? I'd say, yeah, they'll be like, hey, are you Joe Exotic? And 1, because I always just tell them, yeah, I'm just the Vegas version, and well, you got John Phillips next to me who goes up and like introduces himself to this person who's just trying to take a picture. It's like, well, he's just an impersonator, but I'm actually John Phillips, the real Joe Exotic.
Who the fuck is John Phillips? That's what people are saying.
And I was there as his guest, but in my head, I'm like, dude, like, and that's exactly what they would say. Is they just kind of be like, oh yeah, man, that's cool. Is there any way? And then they'd hand him the phone and say, is there any way you can take a picture of me and the fake Joe? And that happens on the road, whenever I'm with John Rinke, I always try to pivot to the real people, no matter who it is, just because they deserve it. I mean, they've lived it. They deserve the pivot. And I'm more of a lightning rod. So whenever they'll put me and Rinky at the same booth at a company, people will come up to me and say, "Hey, is there any way I can get a picture with you, Joe?" I'm like, "Now, I'm just the Vegas version, but that right there, that's the real John Rinky." And they'll be like, "Yeah, my daughter watched the show, but I never really did. But yeah," I say, "Well, the guy with no legs? Yeah." And I'll be like, "Well, here, John, come on in here and get in the picture." And now John's
Yeah.
got his own following. I mean, obviously people know who he is, but
Yeah. I've had him on twice. He's a really, really cool guy.
dude, he's a great guy. Like,
And I see he's involved in wrestling now and everything, wrestling companies. That's bonkers, man.
yeah. And that's what I did was the Memphis Championship Wrestling. I did we kind of did a Jerry the King Lawler, Andy Kaufman remake
Oh, nice.
with Joe going in, and there was Derek the King, because Memphis Championship Wrestling is where Jerry Lawler, had his beef with Andy Kaufman, and they
Yeah.
had a Derek the King, and he gave me a pile driver and broke my neck, and I was in a neck brace for like almost 6 months, and just wanting my revenge. And so I ended up getting Rhino from Impact and old WWE days, and I had Rhino. That was my exotic animal. Like, I may not have
Oh,
any
that's
type,
really good.
yeah, but my revenge. And they were all like, "Well, what are you gonna do?" I was like, "I'm gonna bring an animal. You're gonna see." And they're like, "Well, how are you gonna bring an animal? Carole stole all your tigers." I'm like, "I've got an exotic animal. You wait." And then I brought out Rhino, the man beast, and he gore, gore, gore. And he just gored him over and over. And no, if you get a chance, go to Memphis Championship Wrestling and watch those moments. I think on my TikTok, Vegas Joe X, I've got some of them where I get pile driven, and I'd never been in a ring before. And they
Yeah.
said, "Hey, on your third re-entry, we're going to give you a super kick to the chin." I'm like a Shawn Michaels super kick? I was like, "So do you make contact?" Because I didn't know. I mean, I'm a fan of wrestling, but I didn't know the workings of it. He goes, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "I'm going to touch your chin." I'm like, "Yeah, I can't be chipping a tooth." Like, in my mind, I'm saying that outside, I wasn't saying anything because I'm an idiot. But I was like, "Man, this is dangerous stuff." Well, I get nervous, and you can kind of see it. Well, I'm a little taller than the kick came, so the kick kind of caught me in the neck, and I sold it. But I didn't. When I hit my head on the mat, I saw stars. So the kick didn't hurt, but when
The
I
fall.
fell, I didn't keep my chin tucked. And man, my head hit and I saw stars. He rolls me up, gets me in a pile driver, and we practiced the pile driver in the parking lot. Like, didn't practice it, but he told me. He's sitting there, 100-degree day in Memphis. He's drinking hot vodka out of his glove compartment. And he's like, "You're going to stick your head in between my legs." And I'm like, "All right, that would seem weird on a normal day, but yeah, no, man, I'll do whatever. Just don't break my neck." And he's like, "Yeah, you're going to stick it, and I'm just going to lift you up." I'm like, "Well, I don't know if my core muscles are strong enough for my feet to go up." He goes, "If not, I'll throw you down and we'll try it again." Well, this is recorded TV. This isn't just a show. They put it up on the CW30 there in Memphis. Everybody's watching
Yeah.
it on Saturdays. And I'm like, "Man, I don't want to look stupid." Like, as silly of a statement that is, I don't want to, I didn't want to look dumb. So I was like, "Buddy, this is going to be a full sell moment. Like, just, I may get my neck broke, but I ain't going to bitch out."
Yeah.
So I rolled up, stuck my head in there, and I felt the little tug, and I went straight up. And I had my, Joe boots on, so they're steel toe straight up. He dropped me, and I popped up. They brought in the ambulance and the stretcher and loaded me up with the neck brace. And whew, that wrestling's legit stuff. So whenever Rinky, he'll do the wrestling down, a little south. He was in Arkansas, just a little to the east of me. And he'll get in there with those midgets, and they'll take his leg and they'll start beating somebody with it. No, I'll hang out with John. I'll hang out with John Rinky anytime I ever get the chance. And he's come up with me, in Shawnee, and we stayed there a night.
I
And
I
yeah,
was in Dallas, Texas, and I sent John Rinky a message because I was at WrestleMania this year, and we had a spare ticket. But he was in Dallas that weekend. I think I sent him a message and said, "Look, I've got a spare ticket for WrestleMania, man. If you want to come with us." But he was like, I can't because I think his girlfriend or wife or whoever was with him at the time, so he couldn't leave her high and dry.
Wow. Well, my old lady already knows. There's work. She's, but no, I mean, we went to, we did SummerSlam because it was in Vegas last year.
Yeah.
So I went to SummerSlam and we took the kids, and it's wrestling. I love wrestling. It's it's a big time deal, and it's once further, through the South you get, more serious that it goes, and these people are
Mm.
intense. But
Yeah.
the other, if you ever get a chance to talk to Alan Glover, that's something that you need to have an interview with Alan Glover. Um,
Okay.
as strange as it is, if you notice, because that's what started the whole friction between the Tiger King 2 producers. Because you will never see anywhere where people are talking to Alan Glover. Like the reunion shows right after Tiger King, where's Alan?
Hmm.
Well, he's outside weed eating because Jeff and Lauren weren't letting him talk. And nobody was ever letting Alan talk. Well, I meet him through the Tiger King 2 filming. He was being
Yeah.
hidden in a hotel up the road. Like he wasn't part of the Tiger King 2 filming. He was just in a hotel room, the same hotel I was staying. So I got to meet him, and we got to, just kind of talking, and, spend nights watching, we'll watch Gunsmoke on TV and then start to talking. Well, he ends up in Vegas with a guy, gets stranded out in Vegas. They get in a fight at the Venetian, not a fight, an argument. Um, and the guy's like, well, you can't stay in my hotel room. Well, this is in March. And the only person Alan knew to call was that Vegas Joe guy. And he calls me, he says, hey, he goes, is there any way? Oh, of course, man. I've said, what's crazy is I'm just driving down the strip right now. So where you at? He goes, I'm out in the street. Well, okay. And it was out of the millions of people, because it was March Madness, tons of people. I'm like, Alan Glover, dude, jump in. I was like, what's going on? He tells me the story. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's not good. I said, so where are you staying? Like, I don't know. Well, how are you getting home? I don't know. I don't have a plane ticket. Oh shit. Like, I guess now I'll figure something out. Well, everything's sold out because of March Madness. I
Hmm.
ended up taking him back to my house. And we had a really big rent house, just because it's supposed to be just vacation for 18 months. And I told my wife, because I didn't know Alan well, just conversations that, I mean, he's a hitman, right? And
Yeah.
so I told my wife, and I was like, hey, bring the girls, and my baby boy. I said, bring them down from all their rooms and keep them downstairs, and I'll bring Alan home. Well, we end up getting there. We go swimming. Those TikTok videos are on my Vegas Joe X. We go swimming just to kind of sober up because it'd been a long night. And we get inside, and he sleeps on the couch that first night. Then he ends up staying quite a few nights. And, I put him on his wing because I'm like, dude, you can have that entire wing of the house. That, you pool table, you got it all down there. Well, he starts helping me with yard work, and we remove some palm trees. And finally, I just tell him, I said, Alan, I got some questions to ask. I said, these are like fan questions. Why the hell were you in a bathtub? Like, why were you being interviewed in a bathtub? Well, those answers start coming out. And I'm like, what? They said, what? And then I was like, do you not have any of this on camera? And then I find out how much money he made for Tiger King 1, which he's open about it, but I'm not going to be the one to. And I'm like,
Hmm.
are you kidding? I'm like, are you kidding me? That's all you made for? He's like, that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm
It's
like, Alan,
it's kind of it's
yeah.
a
So I'm like,
well known thing that Netflix don't pay very well, isn't it?
yeah. And I'm like, that's silly. Because he's like, so what'd you get down in Dallas? And shit ton more than that, buddy. But I was like, what is the deal? Like, why haven't you told any of these stories that you're telling me to anybody else? He's like, nobody's asked. And he knew one of the director, Rebecca. He knew Rebecca. Well, I had never met Rebecca at this point. All my contacts were with Eric Good. And I was like, well, dude, call her up. She needs to know about this. Well, he gives me the phone, and I'm just like, Rebecca, he's like, I know, something about credit cards. And Rebecca's like, nobody's really interested in the credit card stuff, which I agree. It's not entertaining. I was like, but that's not what I'm calling about. I'm calling about big time issues. And she's like, oh my gosh. And I was like, and I can't call the FBI because in some of these stories, they're highly implicated. And I'm like, and I'm not, who the fuck? I don't know the FBI's number, It's not like I can just look it up in the phone book or something. So I was like, hey, but you might want to talk to him. And she's like, well, is there any way I can fly out to Las Vegas? I guess, but I mean, is there not a better way to, so this was kind of a, hey, Alan, guess what? I got you a plane ticket home. And he flies to South Carolina. And now he's going to meet with Rebecca. And now she's actually wanting to talk to him because now she knows it's not about the credit card stuff. And he calls me. He's like, hey, is there any way you can come out here? Because I feel like they're trying to work one over on me. I was like, dude, they cannot pay you. But if you have something licensed, if you have licensed material, they can buy that licensed material and then not pay you for your interview, but you're still getting paid. So we recorded our interviews, where I'm asking him the dirty questions and he's giving me the dirty answers. And I've got it. They're terrible. They're raw videos. And I show Rebecca. I'm like, hey, you can buy it. And then, of course, you can re-record it because it's not Netflix worthy. But at least you're buying licensed material from Alan. And so she's super excited. Everything's good. And she goes into the hotel room and interviews Alan. And then she's like, all right, you can leave. And I noticed that some situations were kind of off and Alan's not looking like he's in best shape. I'm like, we can't be just dragging him out into the parking lot and interviewing him and asking some of these questions with him in this capacity. So I called out, like, you're taking advantage of it. This is like how you put him in the bathtub and interviewed him drunk. Like now so me and Rebecca, we had words because now Alan's a friend. Right now Alan is a friend, but at that time Alan was still, I cared about him and I was out there to protect him. And I'm like, hey, that shit's not right. And whatever, Alan's a grown ass man, but be better. And that was the last time me and Rebecca talked. We've texted not pleasant things, but Alan Glover, then he got wrapped up with the John Phillips situation. And I talk to Alan probably every 3 days, and that man's got a story to tell. And if you ever interview him,
I would love to.
Dude, that's the key piece and then they avoided it in Tiger King 2 for whatever reasons. I get it. Nobody's trying to rock the boat, but then you see Joe in prison ranting and raving about shit that he doesn't even know about. Like, I get it. A lot of the stuff he does know about. I'm just saying there's some things that he'll be upset about that he hasn't even been outside of prison to witness.
Yeah.
And you got the fake Joe here that I ain't trying to be, but damn it, somebody needs to be a part of it. Like I'm not wanting to be the hero because everything I know is third hand. I admit, but I've been in the circles of it all, and it's somebody needs to find the answer. I'm not the missing piece to the free Joe, but I could be a voice for Joe. And do I think Joe needs to be free today? Not necessarily, but eventually, soonish. Should he have even been convicted? Not with a real attorney, he shouldn't have been. And so everybody gives me shit, online. They're like, oh, you're just like, I'm not going to argue in the comment sections, but Joe's always been nice to me. Every single person from James Garretson, the jet ski king, that would be an interview that would be a lot of fun for you?
Yeah,
Talk.
I'm actually supposed to have him on this week. We've been trying to nail that down for a while now, but I think it may even be tomorrow. So hopefully,
Dude, dude's
um,
a great dude. Like he's a so mischaracterized, and it's one of those separating the real life human from the character portrayed. And
yes.
that's what I have to deal with out in the street because I'm like, oh my God, how bad is Carole? I'm like, no, Carole, the character that was portrayed, oh, villain. Carole, the real life person that I have been made aware of, pleasant. Now I get it, but I don't have real tigers. If I had a real tiger back here, Carole would hate me, and I'm sure me and Carole would be enemies. But I'm
Mhm.
dealing with fake tigers, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I'm just trying to make people laugh, keeping people aware that Tiger King was a damn good time. Was it a documentary? Hell no. Was it a damn good time? It still is. I could turn that show on right now and laugh.
Yeah,
And it's all about just keep Joe relevant until Joe is reformed, in my opinion. Like,
yeah,
man, Joe, take a humble, take a bite of humble pie, buddy. Like, just you got in a bad way, but man, it sure would be good if he had a friend around him because I don't I don't think he's got many like friends to. Seems like everybody wants to um, help instead of
hmm
just. I don't know. I every day I'm like, one day I'm just gonna be able to cut this off, and I won't ever have some Irish fella getting in touch with me.
that
But
that day
but
is
now
not
that I,
yet.
but now that I've got this and I'm doing it, like this is a platform in which a story could be told. Um, whether it's pro Joe, whether it's pro Big Cat Safety Act that Carole's doing, I don't know enough about real life tigers to have an opinion. But whenever I talk to Carole, I'm like, you have passion for that, and I like to see people with passion. And good for you. I don't know enough about real life cats and breeding to form an opinion, and
Yeah,
I don't know enough about Joe's real life and what he's in jail for to put to say yes or no definitively. But damn it, if he's reform, man, he doesn't deserve to die in prison. Um, Carole doesn't deserve to be hated by a bajillion people, and the fake Joe just wants to have a damn good time. So, all
oh man, it was great to talk to you today. But before we finish up, I just want to know two questions. Okay,
right.
was there ever something you were booked for that you refused to do, and if so, what was it? And then secondly, I can't remember the question I was going to ask. We'll go with the first one first, anyway.
On Cameo, I've had people reach out and they're like, "Hey, I need you to tell my sister's ex-husband's loser ass that needs to, he's lost his 3 kids and that he's a piece of shit dad." And I'm out. Once it stops being fun, I don't do requests like that. I'll it, no. I try not to hurt people's feelings for real.
Yeah.
No matter who it is. Um, Show up gigs. Been invited to sing songs at a marina, a private marina, and it was enough money that if I were ever to step into the gray zone, that would be the reason. Um,
Yeah.
but I didn't. And
Yeah.
do I wish I would have? Maybe because I could justify it. But then if I have to justify it, it's not worth it. So,
Yeah.
but that's
I've
why I'm
thought of
not
the
rich.
second question.
All
I've
right.
thought of the second question. It was like, what's the funniest public interaction that you've had as Vegas Joe?
Every I mean, this right here is me being as podcasty, costumey as I can. I mean, when I take off the glasses and I put on a normal hat per se, you know, if I'm just wearing now that's about as hillbilly as I can get. But if I was wearing just a normal golf hat and a golf shirt, you would think that that's Brad. You know, like surely you've seen somebody with a blonde mullet that I
Yeah,
shit you not, I can't sit at a McDonald's without somebody coming up. And it used to be, has anybody ever told you look like that Joe, that Tiger King guy? That's
yeah,
how it used to be. Like if I was in a restaurant, somebody would say, I don't know if you've ever been told this, but you look like that Tiger King guy. And that's how it started. And now people come up to me and it's cool as shit because I've got an 11-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old daughter and they eat it up. So now people come up and are you that Vegas Joe guy with TikTok? Are you that Vegas? I've seen your videos. And now it's like, yeah, you know, like as silly as that shit is, the girls love it because they're just, Dad, they saw that video where you were, I know. And those videos are so bad. Like, I wish I was good at social media. Like, I wish I had a team to where I could just be creative and the videos were good. The videos suck. Just like this background. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm sitting in a van.
I
Why?
think it's cool, man.
Why don't I have a cool? You know, I want a cool chair. I want a cool backdrop. I want to be professional, but I don't think Joe was ever professional either. So
Yeah.
it kind of worked out.
Before we wrap up, man, I'm going to hand this over to you in full Joe mode and tell people where to find you, what platforms, how to reach out to you, Cameo, etc.
Yeah.
Let's
Oh,
go. I'm gonna remove myself, and you're gonna take the reins here.
yeah. I put on my necklace. Hold on. Hey, guess what? If you go to VegasJoeX.com or VegasJoeX on TikTok, Cameo, especially Cameo, because I'm broke as shit. Come say hi. Send me a message. I'm sure me and you, we could make things exotic together. What am I doing?